We wanted to just take a minute before we toast our collective work as the Century Race Consortium to hear a few final thoughts from some of the center leadership about the grant and about the work that we've done together as 4 centers and 4 universities over the last 4+ years. I want to express my gratitude to people up on stage and many other people who make this happen. And since I haven't said this yet, I want to specifically call out the fact that there have been other center leaders working over the course of the last 4.5 years. There have been directors who are no longer directors, other associate executive directors, and other staff. And so I want to make sure to say how much they've done and how much we appreciate their many contributions. I'm going to ask the each in a second to offer a comment or a thought about the grant. I think everybody knows that we're winding up the grant this term, and so we're thinking about the past and the present and the future. I'll just say by way of starting that when we wrote this grant and came up with this idea of working across centers, a few things. I think we all felt a great sense of urgency that we needed to do something and come together. That the work that we were doing was urgent in our centers, and we weren't exactly sure what kinds of problems we were trying to solve or what kinds of paths we were looking to go down together. But we each had our own ideas. I think in 2018, 2019, and early 2020. One of the things that I felt very strongly at Yale at the time was that the center that I was in directing was too often conflated with DEIB projects on campus and not often enough dignified for the kind of scholarly work, teaching work, activist work we were doing. And so I found myself persistently saying to administrators, we're actually not a hiring unit, we're not kind of promoting understanding on campus. Don't come to us when there are staff complaints. We're doing something else. We're trying to support other projects. I think we also felt as centers a shared sense that our centers on our campuses needed greater institutional support than we were getting, and greater visibility for our people, for our students, for our faculty, for our community members. And so I think that's one of the things that brought us together. And I think we all were convinced that we needed to think together about the kinds of issues that we were facing in seemingly separate ways, but actually quite parallel ways on our campuses. And I know I want to just talk a little bit about how we feel about the last 4.5 years, but I do want to say I think we can pretty resoundingly claim success with this grant. That this grant did a lot of things for the people who we were able to work with. We've had a wide scope, but also managed a fair amount of focus. And so I just want to congratulate my colleagues for the great work that I think we did together and collaboratively. Which one of you would like to talk first?
So we did Halloween practice. So one of the things that I mentioned and that I want to talk about now was something that I think that was fairly obvious here at this particular gathering, and that is the
and was faculty director. And I just was so moved by the relationships that were enabled by this meeting, both between all of us and our centers. That has been very meaningful, between all of the people who are right here right now in terms of Chicago staff. As far as this, just a thank you to all of my colleagues who could not have put on our reimagining university without all of the deep relationships, both that we have together, but also that extend out into our different communities and networks. And I feel like there's a strong sense of knowing that even though the money is no longer here, that these relationships can carry forward. And I think so much of the work that we do feel is either misunderstood, as no, we don't do DEI, Kumbaya workshops, so it's a social worker and for those sorts of things. But I think also our capacities to do things through relationships, I think are grounded in how many of us have had to survive and have survived already in our own communities of origin, our Congo peoples that move through the world by enabled through relationships. And so I think it was very natural for us to do these things this way. And I think we'll probably just continue in this way. So I just acknowledge that Chicago teams coming in. And so that's what I'm really taking with me. And I think those are things that really keep the price on. But I'm grateful that money allowed us to form these relationships. And I hope we do continue. And I hope that those of you who might be coming for the first time today, or those of you who have followed our journeys at different universities, that you do continue those relationships and value when they can birth it going forward in their own careers and lives.
I would like to add that what I love getting part of the experience from the beginning and where we are now, that I look at these years together as being unique, as being dynamic, and as being important. The work that we were able to do collectively stands out to me as being something that's quite special. And regardless of whether you're joining us for the first time or as Steve Gina just shared, been part of this or contributing to it along the way, I think that it's inspiring what's possible to go forward, regardless of whatever structures we will construct for ourselves. And I think another major takeaway for me is the value of community and then the work of actually building it. And that's exactly what this Center of Communications version proved to me. And also talk about the ways in which it just felt really good to be able to kind of meet the moment that my colleagues kept presenting and which were reasons why. So all my counterparts, it's just truly wonderful working with all of you over the years. Even with the changes in leadership or staffing, and we've talked about what would we do differently and everything. I know one thing that I would absolutely keep is the generosity, the commitment to community, the commitment to just being there and supporting each other, regardless of all the extreme things that are happening on our campuses or in the world or in our personal lives. So I really very much appreciated that. I was just in the, okay? I was just in the restroom and I was like, oh, these phrases aren't here before. But they're here now. And I feel like they are theirs. And part of that has very much been just sort of navigating the trials and tribulations of these very interesting times that we live in. But also how much I cherish being able to do that with these colleagues, with the people who made this happen across the campuses, present and also in the world, doing this really important work. And that just feels like a treasure and an honor. And I just want to make sure that comes across clearly. Thank you.
I guess for my part, building on the comments that were already made, really want to thank these folks and others for their friendship and their guidance and their mentoring across the 4 years. I certainly felt enormous gratitude, as Paula said, for the way that this grant allowed us to bring other sorts of experts and other sorts of knowledge producers into our worlds who might not otherwise have been there so actively and so presently. And one of the things that when we were trying to write this grant, what we were aware of is that the world was going to change around us over the course of the 4+ years in which we were working together. And I think that in our excellence together, one of the things that we did well was maintain a strong sense of flexibility on one hand, which in part meant allowing the different campuses to do their own things in the ways that made the most sense at around Chicago and San Francisco, which might be quite distinct, given the location and people and so forth. And at the same time, maintain a kind of fierce focus on the things that we do together, or we really need to be working on together. And in establishing our goals for the grant, we did establish some sort of general areas, working with artists being one example, thinking about university-community relations obviously being another, supporting scholars and students being another. But we looked at the ways in which we approach these different buckets or commitments really did change over time, necessarily. And I think we were wise to allow ourselves to grow and respond and be flexible over the course of this time. And a key example of this, again, shouting out my colleagues, was the pedagogy workshop, the Teaching Grace workshop, which was not fully understood by us back in 2019, 2021. That came to seem more and more important. It came to seem more and more possible through the pandemic. When Zoom made us aware of the ways that we could put people in touch across campuses, as even as a kind of urgency of teaching race and confronting pedagogical challenges seemed more and more. So I had a lot on my holiday. I want to thank you for their friendship and mentoring and their leadership, but also thanks for bringing new ideas forward as to meet the world as it was changing and using the kind of categories that we established in such a new place. So I think that really is a single achievement.
So I want to say something else, and I can't not say this because this is very important. First of all, I want to thank the Yale team for having put together this wonderful memory for us. One of the reasons why I know how much work it is because I've had to think about, we all have to think about putting our conferences, and I know what it takes to do this. I want to thank Victoria, Jacqueline, Alexa, and Sarah Ann back here. Khalil, and anybody else who I have missed, so thank you for doing this. I also want to say that so the other thing I want to say is that we sit up here as the directors, but we didn't do this by ourselves. I cannot tell you how important it was for me to be in conversation every day with the rest of the CCSR team, about what is the best way to use the Monday money? How can we spread it around most effectively? How can we best assist the research and graduate students? Is there any way we can, channel some of this money to undergraduates? And as well as, supporting artists. So that was just an incredibly important thing. It's one of the reasons I was so happy to watch the Teaching Grace and the Clinical Science panel, because that was an idea that, I don't even know how it started, Victoria, Abby, somebody, but it has been so wildly successful. So I want to just point out that we are here as a community, with each other and with talking to them. So thank you.
Well, we're feeling very celebratory. We're feeling a lot of gratitude. I'm looking around to a beautiful group of people, many of whom I did not know even 2 days ago, but certainly very few of whom I knew 4 or 5 years ago. And so this has been a wonderful suggest that we celebrate for a minute, if you have a minute, next door, and enjoy some beer and wine and toast our success. So big thank you to everybody, and really appreciate the chance to be with you all. Thank you all.